everybody. It's Kim O'Brien. I hope you can all hear me. We're having a lot of people involved today, so they're all jumping on. I hope you appreciated that lovely rendition by Johnny Cash, but I have been everywhere. What we're going to do for you today is we've got myself, Kim O'Brien, we've got Kelly O'Brien, and we've got Craig Algers from the EP Cloud, and we're going to show you all the new tools we have available to you and how you can add living trusts and wills to your business practices, make more fees, get more clients, get more referrals. So that'll be all exciting. And first, I just want to give you a quick regulatory update because I have been everywhere. I've been spent the summer really traveling around, visiting with all the insurance commissioners in the various states. I've been to so far 17 states, cities, and it's been quite enlightening. And at Americans for Asset Protection, we're the advocacy arm, we're the lobbying arm for financial services products, for asset protection products, and for the people who sell them. And that's really our message. We have two really clear messages. We believe in asset protection products like long-term care, asset-based long-term care, life insurance, and annuities, and we also really believe in the people who sell them. And we want to make sure that the regulatory environment allows for those sales, allows for access to people like you, experts in the field on insurance and asset protection products. So that's what we go around, that's our message. In addition, I represent a campaign that's called the Fixed Annuity Consumer Choice Campaign because we believed very strongly that the DOL was wrong. And the DOL, the specifics of the DOL was wrong. But hey, we got the Fifth Circuit Court to agree with us. And the Fifth Circuit Court said, yeah, it is wrong. And it's an overreach, and we're going to shut you down. Believe me, I've talked to DOL last week, and they're still working on a revision because they still have the Trump administration memo to attend to. But they are, we believe, they didn't state this clearly, but we believe that their intention is to wait until the SEC work is done. But they tell me they're continuing to work. Karen Lloyd said they're still doing things to address issues that were raised by the Fifth Circuit, and they're still working. But we have a new problem because the the NAIC wants to open up suitability again, and a model we worked very hard on over 3.5 years to write. And I was a part of that writing as Kim O'Brien. Well, I don't know what else I would be, but anyway, I was a part of that. We were down in the trenches with where the commas were and should we use the article the or I mean, it was very detailed, and we worked very hard to get to where we're at. We're told time and time again by these commissioners I've been meeting with that suitability works 99% of the time. So our attitude is, let's not open it up. Why are we conducting heart surgery on a patient who may just have heart concerns and needs a better diet? So we don't want to open up suitability. We think it is ripe for commissioners who didn't get their way the first round to make tweaks, such as changing the 3-year look back on replacements to 5-year. There are already states talking about that. There are states that are talking about adding more product training requirements and adding more other training requirements beyond your annuity training course that you have to take today. All of this just stalls the marketplace and just prohibits consumers to having access to people like you. And we just don't agree with it. If we've got some issues, we need some additional disclosure, let's talk about that. I mean, those are things we can work, those are marginal things we can fix. So that's what the Fixed Annuity Consumer Choice Campaign is all about. And I do want to make a shout out that, this costs a lot of money to travel to all these different cities. And we're not just traveling to, New York and Chicago, the main highlights, which have cheap flights. We're going to Columbia, South Carolina. Commissioner Farmer there is on the NAIC 8 committee, and he's on the executive committee in line to be the president of the NAIC. So you got to get to Columbia through various ways, and those are the types of cities we go to because we're going to the capitals, not the main city, not the Chicagos of the world, if you will. So that costs money. Who's helping us? F&G Life is a major contributor to our activities, and they've been very, very generous with getting our flights covered, our hotels covered. I'm getting the meetings, we're having good conversations. We have usually an IMO or a key advisor in the room with us to help that commissioner understand the role and the job that they do to help consumers get access to annuities. And in addition, they're paying obviously for my hotel rooms and things like that. We also have National Western Life, who is also a participant and very helpful in that. So those, just a shout out to those two carriers who are really funding our activity. And we're the only ones out here doing this. ACLI, the other trades, they believe that we can live with what the NEIC is proposing. We believe we cannot, for one very simple reason. Because the carriers that really are okay with the new conversation around suitability, and they're not using, NEIC is not using the terminology best interest. They think that's a charged terminology, and they've made a decision not to use the word in their redraft. But what they're using is words like the advisor may not put their interests ahead of the consumer. In fiduciary world, that's called a duty of loyalty. They're also stating in their rewrite of suitability that the advisor must act with prudence, skill, and diligence. Those are all fiduciary terms, and they're all best interest applications. So, you know, what's in a name? It may not be using the word best interest, but it's a best interest application. And where we're differing, and good people can disagree, but where we disagree with many of the carriers who want a quote unquote even playing field with variable annuities, because administration understandably is difficult in those companies that have both variable and fixed annuities, that having two different models for disclosure are difficult for them. So they're really lobbying heavily for uniformity, harmonization between variable annuity requirements and fixed annuity requirements. And we're saying, by doing that, it's not even. It's not an even playing field, because guess what? We don't have arbitration on our side. When you sell a variable and there's a dispute over the best interest application of the advisor, or the best interest standards that the advisor may or may not have followed, you've got arbitration to go to. What is arbitration? Arbitration is quick. Arbitration is done. You can't appeal. And arbitration is cheaper. And I've been on two panel or two expert witness for FINRA arbitration cases. We got them done in 3 days. The legal fees are only 3 days worth. You're not waiting and paying a lawyer for, you know, waiting for the court to come in. And again, once the arbitration panel makes this decision, it's done. So we don't have arbitration on our side. Any dispute over a best interest standard used or not used by an advisor and an agent is going to go to court. And that's expensive. That's a liability exposure that is almost unpredictable, and it's huge. So we're out there alone, and we really want to thank F&G Life and also our partner National Western Life, who's been very helpful in both of those, in actually the funding of our activities. So what are we hearing when we're talking to these commissioners? They have 5 red flags that they've been consistently sharing with us. They look first, when they get a complaint in, they look first at the relationship. How did that referral, how did that client come to that advisor? If that client came to that advisor from a best friend or a daughter, you know, a loved one, or another person in the workplace, if it's a personal referral, that's not a red flag. But if it's coming from a seminar, a radio broadcast, TV ad, that's a red flag for them. I'm not saying that those are no's, but those jump to the top of their look because of the referral is what they call impersonal and not as direct. Everybody's telling us, and this is one of our big messages when we get to the Kelly O'Brien part of our program with the gig, is what's the documentation in place for the recommendation? And it's not just the suitability and forms that you used to submit the application to the carrier of your choice. They're looking beyond that. They want to know what other products could have been suitable, did you look at, and why did you make the final recommendation you did? So they want a documentation of the analysis and the consideration you've done before you make the ultimate recommendation. We have an advisor who uses AssessBEST. He always does 3 products. It's just his standard. Some do 2. He always does 3, and he always puts the one he thinks is the best for the client first. He lists it first because he wants that client to see that first, because he understands a little bit about consumer brain activity, and that, you know, what you see first is typically perhaps what you'll end with. But they want to see that you did more than just say, hey, this is the product for you and it's suitable. They want to see what else you've done to make that final determination. And they also they're looking at the asset position of the client very closely. They're looking at that net worth left after the annuity was purchased, and they're also obviously looking at other liquidity sources. Now, what's beautiful about suitability and what you all do already is that there are net worth and liquidity requirements, restrictions on before you can make a recommendation. When I go out and talk, and I just spoke in Philadelphia yesterday, you know, the investment world doesn't have that. You can be 100% in at-risk products in a mutual fund. So they don't have the net worth requirements, the net worth restrictions that we have on the annuity side. So that is, when we talk about their red flag, we talk about this is a protection that the consumer has, and it's sometimes harmful because sometimes people want 100% into an annuity or a life product. But we have that, the other side doesn't. Okay, we're working it, but it is a consumer protection that you can look to, and they are looking at that pretty heavily. They're also looking at the client understanding and memory. You know, what is the client's version of the facts? Now that is where we jump back up to point 2, where your documentation and your understanding of the client's objectives and needs and their agreement with the recommendation must be signed by both of you, because that's the documentation at the time that's going to resonate with the regulator. So how are we dealing with these different regulator activities? You know, the SEC, the chairman just came out about a couple weeks ago saying he doesn't believe there should be any contest, no more contests. We shouldn't have any of these incentivizations that are non-cash based and contest, or, you know, based on production or amount of sales or amount of AUM that you do with a specific mutual fund. They don't want those anymore. We don't have to deal with that on our side today on the insurance side, because we're not under the SEC on the life insurance and annuity side, but the NAIC is talking very specifically. Bullet point number 3 on your screen is non-cash compensation. And so that really, really relates to the contest, that they want full disclosure of how not just this product recommendation, but any product recommendation you have impacts your compensation in a non-cash way, as well as obviously your cash compensation. And I already mentioned due diligence and prudence and skill, and the loyalty factor that the NAIC has in their most recent iteration. And they're also looking at IMO disclosures. I have had 2 regulatory inquiries that I'm representing 2 different IMOs on the disclosures they're using for recruitment packages. So that's starting to raise a level of interest by the different commissioners that we're hearing. So what do? I mean, you got these red flags. Even if you're 100%, you know, all the time doing the right thing, what do you do to protect yourselves? Well, we suggest that you add some planning services, you make sure that your recommendations and your analytics for those recommendations are documented, secured in a cyber-secured way, dated, acknowledged by your client, and is your protection. Don't just rely on the insurance required forms, because those protect the insurance company for their for their suitability recommendation requirements, but they don't necessarily protect you, because what we're hearing and what I'm doing with advisory inquiries is that they want to see the analytics behind the recommendations and the rationale for making that recommendation. Look at additional services, and we're here to show you one today. EP Cloud, which is estate planning, living trust, and wills service, and it's a great service to add to your portfolio. What additional services do from a regulatory perspective is they show that you are worthy of whatever compensation you were receiving for a recommendation you make, because you're not only receiving compensation for making that recommendation, but you're providing additional services to your clientele that need to be covered on an operational basis and warrant the additional compensation. That was clear in the fiduciary standard of the DOL rule. That is clear in legal fiduciary standard, that your fees that you receive, the compensation you receive, is commensurate with the services you provide. So look to that, and look at EP Cloud, which we'll tell you about in 2 seconds. Also add some credentials to your portfolio. Americans for Asset Protection offers some really great discounted programs. Elder Planning Program, which is sponsored by Texas Tech University. We're very thrilled to enter into that relationship with Texas Tech. And Certified Retirement Counselor, which is an accredited designation and is a really great designation for income planning. And the fourth thing we would suggest is look at the memberships that you are in. Memberships do a couple of things. They increase your networking activity. They also increase your knowledge base, because you're talking to others in similar situations to yourself, similar businesses to your own, and they can help you expand and explore different opportunities. So that's what we think are good next steps to address some of these regulatory red flags and to turn them green. So we want to jump over to Kelly now and talk about AssessBEST Pro, because one thing AssessBEST does so fabulously is we establish the documentation and the analytics for the recommendation through our trademark GIG process, the Guaranteed Insurance Gap process. So I'm going to change it over to Kelly and let him talk to you more about the AssessBEST platform, and then we'll jump into Craig with the EP Cloud. So Kelly, take it over.
Okay, thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. And I'm going to be very brief here today, but I wanted to show you a couple of the integrations that we've added over the course of the last few months. Kim, Craig, can you all see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good, good. All right. This is the agent page on the AssessBEST software. And I'm going to show you this one first. It clicks out directly to the CanX feed, where you can go out and do a product analysis. And in this particular case, you can look at income annuities, SPIAs. You can look at fixed indexed annuities. You can look at MYGAs. You can look at variable annuities. On the deferred annuity analysis, you can also look at comparative analysis based on income options and comparative analysis based on the rates, okay? So those are all available to you as an AssessBEST user. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to open up the Mary O'Sullivan case that we worked on recently, and I want to show you just a couple of things that I think will be really beneficial for you. And immediately I'm going to look at, we have a couple of different reports that we've uploaded into the system. We'll look at this one later, but I'm going to open up her recommendation report first. Okay, so here's what we ultimately arrived at when we did an analysis for Mary O'Sullivan. This is an actual case, and these are the compliance checkpoints that we determined to be relevant to her case. She would we recommended that she move, or the system recommended that she move $205,000 for protection purposes, and that's based on the rule of 100. The client is 64 years old. She plans to retire when she's 70 years old, and that means that we can move that money with an opportunity to turn on income to supplement her Social Security at age 70, 71, and basically we looked at some 7-year products and a 10-year product. Basically the products looked like this. We ultimately chose to include these. This is actually a 7-year product, so I can change that, but I've got a 7-year here. This is a 7-year product. This was a 10-year product. You probably all are familiar with these products already, but these were the appropriate products for her specific case. We ultimately chose not to put the Global Atlantic product into the report. Reason why? She didn't like the 10-year surrender period. She wanted something that perhaps she could roll over into a new product at the appropriate time, or she could choose to turn on income at the appropriate time. So we did not put this one in the report. You'll see that in a minute. Now, we also put some significant information under additional notes down here that really played out the narrative of who she is, what she's looking for, and why it's important to her. This is an extremely important part of your compliance checklist because you're giving all of the information about the client. Make sure that this information right here is relevant to her situation. Include everything that you discuss. Okay? So
Kelly,
we're
if I
going to
could
go.
just jump in.
Yeah,
One of the
sure.
beauties, because I designed this platform. One of the beauties I think in it, if you just jump back to your old scope anyway, is
Okay.
that you
I can go
get to
back.
decide this. It's okay, you're fine. You get to make these decisions. We are not prescribing what products fit the analytics of your client. We are just providing the gap. What protection gap does this client have, and what income gap does this client have? They may not have an income gap. We had a case with PJ Davis over at Davis Life. She had a client that was just unbelievably planned and didn't have an income gap. You may not have that, but you'll probably have a legacy gap. And Kelly, while you're jumping around and getting into the actual report, what we talk about with the gig, I call it the three-legged stool, and think of the legs as L's. You've got longevity, you've got loss, and you've got legacy. All those are risks if they're not in a guaranteed insurance product. It may not be all of their assets, but they probably have one, two, or all of the above: longevity, loss, or legacy risk. They want to provide money from the grave. They're overextended in the market. That's the loss risk, or they've got longevity risk. They're going to have a risk of outliving their money. And last thing I'm going to pop in with Kelly is Ken Fisher, in his definitive retirement report, states that the biggest fear of most consumers is that they will outlive their money. Now, remember, Ken Fisher doesn't like annuities, but if that isn't a prescription for an annuity, I don't know what is, or a life insurance product. So the three legs: longevity, loss, and legacy. And what AssessBEST does is we just ask you three simple questions. What's the expenses? What's the income? And what's the asset base? The expenses before and after retire, the income before and after retirement, and the asset base, what's at risk and what's not at risk. Those three elements are what drive this report and your gig assessment. So I'll shut up now, Cal.
I don't think that's ever possible, but anyway, the guaranteed income, as Kim said, income, expenses, and assets. That's what we're focusing on. We had a client who just came in on board last Friday. She had a case that she was working on. She had an appointment on Tuesday. We got her all set up with AssessBEST. She understood how to do. I spent about an hour with her on the phone on Monday talking about how to use the system. She went into that meeting with a full-blown report. This is what we were looking at right here. This is not the same report, but this is a different report. But she made a $300,000 annuity sale on Wednesday based on using this software, and she was thrilled with it. This can happen to you too. Now, what we're looking at here is the GIG, the GIG gig guaranteed insurance gap. One is an income gap and one is a protection gap. These are the most important things that you're going to run into using AssessBEST. And why? Because we separate ourselves from the competition because we are all about those annuity opportunities, the insurance opportunities, the guaranteed insurance solutions, the guaranteed insurance gap. In this case, Mary O'Sullivan has a $515 a month income gap at age 70 when she retires. How do we know that? This is Social Security. That's what she'll be earning. She has a 401k plan right now that's valued at $300 and some odd thousand, $340,000. That's all she has in savings. And Of those, some of that is in a checking account, savings account, but the remainder is all in the 401k. We use the rule of 100 to determine how much of that money should be protected right now. It's exposed in the marketplace based on the 401k administrator right now. It's a 401k that was built by her ex-husband many years ago, and she has access to it, and she wants to start taking that income when she turns 70. We've determined that her income at that time will be $2,300 per year, per month. Her expenses based on our cost of living adjustments into what she's earning today and what she's spending today, what she will be spending in the future. So that leaves her with a $515 gap. 204,000, almost 205 is her protection gap. And here's the gap. It's pictured right here. People love this. Clients love this because it tells the whole story. This is a powerful image. When you see that red wedge showing up as a guaranteed insurance or an income gap and as a protection gap, your clients are going to love it too. Okay? So here's her risk tolerance. She's extremely defensive. 34 out of 100 means that she doesn't want any of her money tied up. But of course, suitability rules say that we can't move all of her money. So we'll just leave the rest of it out there as a 401k. And she'll be able to draw from that in the future as well. But in the meantime, she'll be able to protect future income based on what her guarantees will be using an annuity. Planning time horizon 1 to 5 years, slightly a little bit more than that, but that's what we put in here. This is all accurate information. We just changed her address, changed her phone number. Now, I noticed when I told you before that we had 2 different products that were dropping into this, these are the 2 products that we have entered, okay? And we have all of the information. This is your expertise right here. This is you entering this information in her behalf based on the information that you've already identified as being relevant to her case. And then this is the compensation. And in addition to that, we've identified these objectives that we're meeting as a result of all of this analysis. Guaranteed income, income for life, protection of savings with a strong company, risk tolerance, diversification, time horizon, additional objectives. Supplement Social Security, protect money, generate additional income.
And Kelly, could I jump in here?
Yep.
These are the objectives met are all on a checklist in the system, so you just check them. You don't have to type it all in. But I will say on the compensation piece, because we anticipated different applications under the DOL rule, which isn't applicable now, but we anticipated qualified money is different. The point is that the compensation you can select to included in your report or not included. It's an optional report. It depends on how you do business, what you want your customer to know. So while we do have the compensation on this report, because I think Pete was the advisor, wanted it in there. He's a RIA, but you don't have to. It is an optional request, and we have a lot of optional things that you can include and not include on the report depending on how you communicate with your client and how you want your client to receive information.
Thanks, Kim. Appreciate that information. Okay, now I mentioned before that we have the CanEx feed. I'm going to go and show you because I uploaded that CanEx analysis directly into this report, and I'm going to go show you that right now. This is what we determined to be the appropriate products for her. This is an analysis showing the guaranteed minimums, and you can see that we're well within our $515 per month. And then later on in the report, it shows using the Monte Carlo simulation, showing what we might be able to expect with basic growth in the underlying index creditings, interest crediting mechanisms that we use for this particular client. And so with that, we can see that number one, we're well beyond the minimum requirements that we need regarding the income, but in total economic value, in death benefit, in income benefit value, total economic benefit value, death benefit, we're well beyond what she is needing, and that's the basis for our recommendations, okay? So now, people ask me, the most difficult part of the job is to make sure that you're looking at all of the client's assets. And I understand that. That's why we have brought EP Cloud into the mix, because when you're helping the client build, when you're helping to understand the client's needs, when you're trying to look at all of the assets, there is no better way than to build a living trust for that client and then help them move the assets into the trust, thereby giving you full access to the assets that they own. Now, with that, hopefully I can do this the right way here. I'm going to...
Hey, Kelly, I did it for you. Craig should already be
okay.
receiving my
Okay.
request.
So you've already gone to Craig. This is Craig Gallagher. Craig is at EP Cloud, and he's going to tell us about the EP Cloud product that we have available for you right now. Thanks. Go ahead, Craig.
Okay, hey everybody. Excuse me as I'm pulling up my demo screen here. So yeah, as Kelly introduced, we provide a great solution, a great method for advisors and agents to extend their hand into helping clients establish the legacy part of their holistic financial plan. Okay, and the unique feature of our estate planning solution is that we are built and geared towards the advisors and the agents in the financial service industry. While there's many do-it-yourself document solutions out there, online do-it-yourself solutions, none of them are compliant to be used by advisors because of the do-it-yourself component of it. EP Cloud has partnered with a network of national attorneys so that the attorneys can be doing the legal work for the clients, which is what makes us compliant for professionals in the financial services industry. But before I jump in, Kelly and Kim, I guess I just want to ask if there's any particular questions you want me to address, or any info about the company that you want me to talk about before I jump into a real brief demo.
Craig, I would offer the question that we get the most of is the trust mills, and how is this different, and how EP Cloud works differently, and how your legal activities have assured us that we're not dealing with that situation.
And okay. Craig, I'd like to add, I think that the majority of the people on this call are really interested in understanding the process. What is their role? How do they get involved in it? What happens after they submit the data? What happens when the report comes back to them and they submit to the client? What are the costs? All of that kind of stuff, so that everybody on this call can really internalize this process and to find out if it's something that's going to work for their own personal business. Okay?
Okay.
That's really it.
Sure. Let's start with the trust mill question. That's probably something that's on the forefront of everyone's mind right now. So one of the best ways to explain or to answer this question is to address our company's history. We started as a legal plan in California in the early 90s, which was around the same time period and the same part of the country when trust mills were originally being cracked down on. Okay, so our original legal plan was basically a non-automated version of what we do today. It was all pen and paper intake, same workflow process. Advisors would gather or assist clients in aggregating their estate planning information, putting all their thoughts down onto a paper intake form. The advisors would ship that to the legal plan for the attorneys to review and make recommendations about or for the clients. Once the documents were recommended, the legal plan would then draft the documents, ship the completed documents with the attorney cover letter back to the advisor for the advisor to deliver to the client. So the advisor was able to stay in the loop, have a lot more oversight in their client's estate planning, while also keeping the client 100% in-house, while still allowing an attorney to do the legal work for the client. Okay, so that was the old process. It's pretty much the same today, just no pen and paper and no snail mail. It's all automated and in the cloud. But in the early 90s, the Attorney General in California was cracking down on several trust mills, and since we were playing in the same area at the same time, we were also investigated. We were one of the few organizations that weren't shut down. We were one of the few that were given the stamp of approval to go ahead and continue as we were previously, because of the way that we had attorneys drafting the documents and the role of the advisor. The advisor or agent was merely assisting in the data gathering. The advisor wasn't making any legal recommendation or drafting the documents himself. All they were doing was assisting with getting the information from the client, sending it to the attorney so that the attorney could do all the work as well. In addition to that, a couple of important things to keep in mind today to stay compliant is to not present yourself, excuse me, or position yourself as anything more than what you are. You aren't an estate planning specialist. You're not an attorney when you're using EP Cloud services. Rather, you are a financial advisor assisting with the client's estate planning process. In addition to that, the process of securing their estate plan needs to be separate from any other financial service recommendations, right? So if an advisor is slipping in the signature pages of an insurance or an annuity product at the same time as the client is, completing the signature pages for their estate plan, we want to make sure that clients know that their estate plan is separate from any other product or service that the advisor is providing. Okay, so with those two things in mind, positioning yourself in the right way, as well as positioning the estate planning service in the right order, you're staying compliant and you're not being labeled as a trust mill. Okay, Kelly, Kim, anything else you want me to address on that subject?
I think that was great. The only question I have out here that could be easily addressed is one of our attendees is asking, is using EP Cloud considered giving legal advice?
Right. So kind of as I mentioned, advisors aren't giving legal advice. They're merely assisting with the data gathering and submitting it to the attorney for the attorney and their system to review, analyze, and make decisions for the client. So as an example, one common spot where advisors can overstep their bounds is by telling a client, oh, you should have a trust or you should have a will, versus one or the other. It's the responsibility of someone who has a law degree and is licensed to practice law in that state to advise a client as to what documents they need in their estate plan. So an advisor or a client going through EP Cloud isn't making a decision for themselves, and they're not receiving any recommendations from their advisor about which documents they need. The attorney in the attorney system is telling the client, hey, based off your net worth level, you own a house, you need a trust-based portfolio, or no, you need a will-based portfolio given the state's standards and regulations. Okay, so to address, I think maybe just for time's sake, I probably won't go into too much of a demo right now. Maybe we can have advisors who want to see a demo, they could reach out to us after the webinar to set something up later next week. But for now, I'll cover just briefly, Kelly, the points that you asked about. Mm-hmm. Cost to clients through EP Cloud. Clients are going to pay, there's two tiers of pricing for clients through the EP Cloud system. The first tier is a trust-based portfolio. Most clients that go through EP Cloud are going to receive a trust-based portfolio because home ownership is going to trigger a trust recommendation. In any state, owning a house is going to trigger probate. So we want to keep our clients' estates out of probate. Therefore, owning a house is going to trigger a trust-based plan. The cost of a trust-based plan is $650 nationwide. So in any state, it's going to be $650 to the client. That's for a married or a single trust. That price is going to include the pour-over wills for each spouse, as well as healthcare documents, advance directive, healthcare proxy, HIPAA privacy form, as well as the financial power of attorney. So all the core documents that the client would need to go into their estate plan, covered for $650. For clients that don't own a house, that don't have significant assets, they're going to be recommended a will-based portfolio, which is all those documents without the trust. And the cost of that tier is $125 per spouse. So $125 if it's an individual, $250 if it's a married couple. Okay. Now,
Craig, could I suggest, I do think if you could go through a quick demo, it would really be valuable. I know our advisors on the call, I see many of their names. I think if you could just walk through it, you know, we have some time. Most of the questions are administrative kind of questions on whether they can get recordings and Ken Fisher and stuff we can address quickly. So why don't you do that, if you don't mind? Sure.
Yeah. And as I'm going through the demo, it'll explain the process that the advisors go through.
Okay, great.
Okay, so take, for example, a client that comes into your office today and says, hey, I want to get some estate planning documents set up. I think I want a trust or a will. Can you help me? Your answer is yes. I have access to a nationwide network of attorneys here in our state, and I can help you submit your information to those attorneys for them to recommend what documents you need in your estate plan, and then draft those documents at a really affordable price. Okay, and so that usually will start with administering or delivering our preparation packet to the client. You'll use this preparation packet to help the client put all their estate planning thoughts down on paper before you pull up the attorney's online questionnaire. Naturally, you know, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. Clients usually aren't prepared to answer all of those questions without putting some forethought into it. So you'll deliver the preparation packet to the client, and then say a week later, have them come back into your office to go through the attorney's online questionnaire together. So I'll show you a quick demo of what the online questionnaire looks like. Okay, so we log into our advisor account. We're just in a demo portal right now, so these are all fictitious clients. So we're just going to create a client account for a John Doe fellow real quickly. Okay, so we'd enter in their basic information, give them an email on file so that the attorney can get a hold of the client in the future when needed. Selecting the state that the client is in is going to pull up our list of available networked attorneys. We have demo attorneys or fake attorney profiles plugged in here, so we'll just pick one of those attorney demo profiles. This is going to be the attorney of record for your client here, and so again, this is highlighting what makes us unique in the financial services industry, because there is a real attorney assigned to every client and is considered the attorney of record. We're different from a do-it-yourself online document solution where clients are practicing law for themselves, not under the the supervision of a licensed attorney. Okay, so first step is completing what we call the triage portion of the attorney's online questionnaire. This is before any documents have been recommended. We're just submitting the basic information that the attorney's analytics need in order to make the document recommendation. Okay, so we're asked about marital status, existing documents, estate planning documents in the client's portfolio, whether or not we own real estate. Let's see, let's go ahead and make this a little bit more complicated. We'll say this is a married client. You see it opens up more follow-up questions here. We're married, spouse's birth date. Just follow along with me as I cruise through this real quickly. Are there children from outside of this relationship? Our system is going to put AB provisions in place when needed. We'll keep it fairly simple here.
Craig, when you say AB provisions, what does that mean?
Yeah, AB provisions are usually recommended when there's assets that should be kept separate between spouses. So if there's prior children from previous
Oh.
marriages, it's probably a good idea to keep assets, separately
As in
owned
A
assets
assets and
separate.
B assets. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. A assets and B assets.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yep. And here's another example of when AB provisions would be needed if there's substantial or assets of substantial value that aren't considered owned by both. We'll keep it fairly simple here, though. Is the spouse capable of signing legal documents? Prior existing estate planning documents? Do we own a house? Or approximate net worth? Just as you're for FYI for the agents and advisors listening in, the average net worth of clients that get their documents through EP Cloud is just under 3 million. That's just to tell you the type of client profile or demographic that we're used to handling. We can handle much higher than that through the automated process for clients with a very high net worth, getting close to the federal estate tax threshold. We have a live review process that our attorneys take part in to handle more complex planning for those clients.
And I would just like to jump in at the average. I've done a lot of research. The average cost of probate in most states, just the legal fees are $15,000 to $2,000. Then you got court costs, you got different administrative fees. So you're going to be anywhere between $2,000 and $2,500. And so even if you have a $100,000 estate, isn't it worth $650 so you don't spend $3,000? It seems to me to be a no-brainer, but understanding your analytics and your average is for the folks in your system, but this is just even good for people with very modest estates too.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's very common for a single widow or widower with a couple $100,000 in assets, and a lot of that's their house, to go through EP Cloud. In addition to the cost savings, the benefit about having even a trust-based portfolio is you're keeping your assets or the inheritance much more readily available to your posterity, right? So probate, even for low-valued assets, can tie up your assets for sometimes over a year before your children or your beneficiaries can touch it. In addition to that, probate is a public proceeding, so it makes all of your the financial aspect of probate available to the public. Good examples of that is what happened with several recent celebrities. Yeah, Aretha Franklin, who had a very high net worth without a will. All of her private matters were made public. So in addition to cost savings, privacy, timeliness, ensuring your wishes are carried out, there's a lot of reasons for getting a trust set up, regardless.
If I may add one more, Craig, that I read about with the Aretha case, is that probate must listen to anybody else who is submitting a claim. So the requirements of probate, so if there's someone, Kim O'Brien, hey, I wrote this song you sang. I didn't, but any claim to the estate has to be heard by probate court, and they have to consider it for available distribution. Whereas with a trust, it's locked. The trust is distributed the way the trust says.
Yep. Yeah. Very very important fact to consider. Okay, so we've completed the triage portion of the questionnaire. We're ready to view the attorney's recommendation. Go ahead and click next. Here are our fictitious attorney profile here in the state of Arizona has recommended a Mary Trust package. I forgot to change this setting heading into it, but the cost is $650 for a Mary Trust package. I apologize for that. The cost for the financial and the healthcare packages with the POAs, advanced directives, etc., are free. So it's just the trust documents that the client's paying for. Here at this screen, this is an opportunity for the client to meet the attorney or to be introduced to who their attorney is. And the attorney speaking to us at this point saying, hey, thanks for the information. Based on the answers you provided, here's what I'm recommending. So again, the attorney's doing the legal work here for us. Very important feature. Here's the documents I'm recommending for the John Doe estate plan. All right, so the client knows the cost up front, right before they really dig into the meat of this. If they're satisfied with the recommendation and the price, we go ahead and click Start My Estate Plan. The rest of the process is taken up with completing the questionnaires associated with the recommended document packages. Usually takes 30 to 45 minutes from this point. We're going through questionnaires that follow the exact same format as the one we just completed. Answer the question you read here, click Next. Through these questionnaires, they're going to name successor trustees, outline their beneficiary wishes, or just make any disinheritance, forgive any debt forgive any debt that any beneficiaries owe to them, name healthcare and financial proxies, and make age-based distributions. So very simple process. You can see we've made it a very comfortable user interface. So this is something that you can comfortably navigate through with the client in your office or at their home, or however you meet with your clients. By the end of the process, once you've completed the questionnaire for the different packages, you're able to review all of the inputted information, make sure everything looks correct before you click Submit. After you click Submit, you're able to preview the attorney's drafts with the client. Thanks to the advanced automation that we use, we're able to put drafts in front of your client immediately upon completion of the questionnaires. And then once all 3 document packages have been completed and paid for, then we will print and ship the documents to your office in a nice presentation format for you to assist with document delivery. You can, if you have a notary service available, you can assist with notarizing and executing the signature pages, and then uploading those signature pages back to us so the attorney has those on record. And then the final step, if it's a trust that's been recommended, is retitling assets, which is where, as Kim and Kelly have alluded to, where advisors and agents can receive a lot of value. You're able to open up all of their assets, see everything that they own, and discover, needs for additional financial services. The way to stay compliant is just taking care of the estate planning work first, having that completely done and taken care of, and then next, separately, let's take a look at the assets that you own and other financial services that you're in need of. Okay, so other than a couple other small details, that's the bulk of the process from start to finish. Any questions that have come up, Kim or Kelly, that I should address?
Yeah, there are a couple, and I think that number one, I've done a screenshot capture of all of the questions that are out there, and so we'll produce an FAQ and send it to everybody that was on the call today. You've all been very active, and we appreciate that. We still have the full number of folks who started with us are still with us, and so obviously we're hitting some hot buttons out there. Let's start with just a couple of questions, and we can probably
Kelly,
get.
before we start, let's just get rid of the cost for all this really quickly.
Sure. Okay.
With AssessBEST Pro, which comes with the 2 critical features we talked about today, the Canix Analytical Tool and the EP Cloud, you normally would be paying $249 a year for just the AssessBEST Pro and the Canix Analytics Tool, and we're not going to do that. And then we're going to add in EP Cloud as a wonderful service that you can provide. And by the way, the $650 for the trust, what many of our advisors are doing is the $650 for the trust, and they're adding on their own fees for the services they're providing. So this is a additional revenue source for you, as well as a service you're providing your clients. And EP Cloud, if you went directly, the wonderful folks at EP Cloud, you would be paying $500 a year for that. So $249 for the AssessBEST package with the Canix Analytics at $249, EP Cloud at $500. We're taking all that away. And this is a Labor Day special. It's still running because we're all still laboring, right? But we're going to give it to you all for $35 a month. And I didn't fix the slide, but you can ignore the September 28th deadline because we just have had so much activity. We're just going to respond to it and extend everything. So for $35 a month, you can get the entire package of the AssessBEST software sales platform, Canix Analytic Tool, Some of our IMOs are doing the Canix analytics for their agents themselves, so that's wonderful as well. But if you want to do it, we've got it included. And then, of course, we have the EP Cloud package. So those are all great. But Kelly, why don't you go back, and I'll share my screen back with you, and you can do the questions and answers.
Yeah, absolutely, I will do that. But as I said, I did do a screenshot of all the questions, and I'll take those, and
Okay.
we'll develop answers for everything. There are way too many for us to deal with here today. We'd be here till it would take us probably an hour to get through the entire list. But we can start. I was hoping to finish this in 1 hour, and we're we're closing in on 1 hour right now. I want to, and I think you did a good job of answering just a couple of the questions. The next question that I want to get to today is notary services. Craig, could you just help us with that one a little bit about the delivery of this actual estate plan to the client?
Yeah, the opportunity to act as a notary is we have a lot of EP Cloud users that find this useful as a prospecting method. In addition, we had some advisors be creative with the requirement of witnesses along with the notary to turn the executing of signature pages into an opportunity to prospect. And the way that they do this is they show up to the client's house and beforehand ask the client to bring 2 of their neighbors in to act as the witnesses for the signing of their documents. And then naturally, as the advisor or agent is notarizing the documents and the neighbors are signing the witness sections, naturally the conversation comes up, hey, can you help me set this up for myself as well? So it can become a very good source of finding new clients for your other services as well.
That's a ding, ding, ding moment. Referrals, folks.
Oh yeah, big time. But in addition, beyond that, though, it's pretty easy to become a notary. Each state has their own process. It's usually a pretty small fee. There's a couple hours of training or education that you have to take part in. But once you are a notary, you can notarize any other documents for your clients in that state. And then each state has a different renewal period. Some states require a yearly renewal. Sorry, can't say that right. Renewal. Other states.
We have to say it all the time, Craig, in our world.
Okay, good.
Kelly, could I just jump on a couple questions because I'm excited about them? No? Yes?
Yes, I had my mute on.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to jump on a few things that are quick and easy to get rid of, if you will. One question, Craig, is, and you and I have talked about this, and we did our due diligence ahead of time, but one person is asking, what's the difference between LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer? And they also ask about Ramsey's, which I can't address, but you can answer it very efficiently, Craig, on the difference between LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer and EP Cloud.
Yeah. Yeah, really the main difference is who the product was built for. For a client that is comfortable and confident navigating the complexities of estate planning themselves, LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer can be a fine option, right? For other clients that don't know the differences between a trust or a will, they don't know the other state-specific healthcare documents that they might need, it's easy to overlook some really important aspects of their estate planning. Especially if the client has some intricacies within their specific scenario. For example, if a client has a special needs child that is receiving federal or state aid, they can really mess up that child's Social Security distributions each month if they don't plan for it accordingly. So those, since we've baked the attorney into the entire process, we're allowing the attorney to make those really crucial decisions and to ask all of the questions, to turn over every stone in the client's planning so that nothing is missed. And ultimately, the client can rest easy knowing that, hey, a licensed attorney, an experienced estate planning attorney did this work for me. We were using the modern technology and automation, cloud-based technology and software that's available out there to streamline everything and automate it, make it more cost-effective. But still, it's a very real attorney-client relationship. And so then with that, it's a tool that's built to put in the hands of financial advisors and agents so that we can empower you to integrate estate planning more effectively and efficiently into your practice. LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer are addressing the direct-to-consumer market. They're doing fine with that. Good for them. You know, tremendous success there. We're having tremendous success putting our tool in the hand of agents and advisors who want to have a very active role in their clients' estate planning.
That's great. I have to. I'm jumping around on my screen because I have to get you. You have the questions, Cal. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. But all I'm going to say next, and then we'll produce the FAQ and send it out to everybody. The next steps, get in touch with me, and if necessary, we can either do a joint call with Craig. We can talk about AssessBEST. We can talk about the process, how to get set up, how to use the tools, etc. This is not the end of the learning curve, okay? We're just beginning. So the next steps will be to get in touch with me. If there's interest, we'll advance as quickly as is necessary for you, and we will take care of all of the ongoing needs. And in addition to that, we'll be available to answer questions as they come up in the future when you're using our tools. Okay, so this is not the end. This is just the beginning, and we're looking forward to working with all of you. But we will get an FAQ out to you. We will send a recording of this event to you. And with that, we're well beyond the 1 hour time limit that we had imposed. We still have quite a few people on board, and we thank you all for joining us today. And hope you all have a great weekend, and stay out of the way of Florence, okay? She's spinning around out there, and just keep yourself safe, okay? So with that, anything else to add, Craig, Kim?
Well, I have a question. Is Florence a male or a female?
I referred to as she, so obviously female.
Okay. Well, we always have that problem with Kelly and Kim as well. So I thank everybody and thank Craig and EP Cloud. We are really thrilled about EP Cloud because we think it's just a great synergy with the gig, uncovering the guaranteed insurance gap. And we just think it's a wonderful partnering tool that you can add to your businesses and increase your revenue and increase your client share. So we're very excited, and we thank them so much for their partnership. And I agree with Kelly. Have a great weekend, and thank you all. So bye-bye. I guess I should finalize it, right?